Thank you for that lovely introduction. Thank you very much for inviting me to join you today. Very honored to join this highly skilled group. Fantastic to meet with you today. Your industry is in such demand and has probably seen more pressure than anyone over the past few years, the past 2-3 years. So kudos to you for the your career aspirations and that you do all the hard work that you do for us. Ironically, as we talk about technology, you're going to see that my name says Nadine, but it's not Nadine. It's I'm Sandra. So as much as I keep changing it, I couldn't reload my Zoom file, so I just decided we'll just go with it. So if you like the presentation, my name is Sandra Boyle. If you don't, my name is Nadine. I'm just kidding. But nonetheless, I'm just going to share my screen here. I'm happy to talk to you today about fast tracking your PMO. And I am not able to share. So just Ramona, it says its host is disabled participant screen sharing. So
hold on one second.
No worries. I'll just keep talking. So as Abdullah had said earlier, there's different types of PMOs. Regardless of the industry, the interesting thing is as Nadine had earlier mentioned, I've worked in a number of different industries. The reality is the way that we mobilize people, the way that we organize them, we align to our strategies, it's the same. The concepts are the same, but the content, the experience that you bring to your industry is then what you leverage, obviously, as you go forward and you work on your project portfolios and your performance. Am I back on? I am. Okay, so let me know when you can see my screen. We are good. Okay, so, fast tracking your PMO, this can seem like a daunting task, but it doesn't actually have to be. There's a framework that the PMO Global Institute has created that you can use and leverage to institute your own project management office, excuse me, at your organization. And we're going to take a moment today to talk about that and talk to you about how do you leverage this framework. Before I get started, I just want to talk about what is a PMO. And so from our PMO guidebook, a project management office, PMO, is a group consisting of internal and external entities, which defines, maintains, and ensures standards for project management to deliver strategic initiatives. So this, in various organizations, may be a project management office, it may be a program management office, it may be a portfolio management office. But today we're talking about all of these. This applies to all of them. We are talking about these different types of PMOs. So just make sure that we were on the same page with that. An interesting quote that I would like to talk about is, coming together is the beginning, staying together is progress, and working together is success, by Henry Ford. It's an interesting quote because, in my 20 years of working in projects and in project management offices have lots of challenges. And there's a lot of different issues and elements that will come up. So as we go through, I thought that this was really apropos because we can bring a PMO together, but it is a constant journey that you need to work with. And this framework today will help you not only start your PMO, but be mindful of the things that you need to do to keep it going and keep it successful. And I say that because there's a lot of challenges. And just maybe in the chat, you can share with me your experiences. What experiences have you had as challenges in PMOs that you've worked with? Yeah, optics, structures missing. Yeah, sometimes too rigid. Great. Yeah, these are great points. I mean, structure, we talk about the structure missing. projects doing their own thing, lack of transparency. You know, even if it's too rigid, was the wrong structure put in place for that type of organization? Did it not take into consideration the culture? Yeah, you know, not always sticking to those processes, top-down support, excellent. All of those absolutely valid things that you've raised. Some other example, oh, wait. So Paul says, some PMOs forget to realize that a project is something being done, not the side of regular duties. We do not always have fully dedicated to the project. You know, it's a great point, because not all organizations, it all depends on the type of PMO you've set up. And actually, this is something that PMO Global teaches in their courses, that there's different types of PMOs, and choosing the type of PMO and being mindful of that. So depending on the type of PMO you've set up will depend on what that looks like for your group. Some other examples that you might have seen, maybe it's lack of project management understanding across the organization, or you talked about optics, inability to actually be transparent, but then also show the value that the PMO brings. That top-down support, lack of clear objectives, not knowing exactly what it is we are supposed to deliver, or everybody having a different interpretation of what we're supposed to deliver. Standardization of processes, responsiveness to changes, you know, being able to pivot when required, or maybe not funded or resourced to match the scope that you're supposed to deliver. So these are some of the challenges. There's lots of different challenges that PMOs do experience. We look at that, how does the data stack up? And we have some interesting statistics to talk about. 54% of PMOs lack the ability to track KPIs in real time. So measurement is such a big part of staying on top of your PMO, your portfolio, your projects. And most projects just don't have that real-time ability. 80% of project managers state that they can't get by without project portfolio management processes and technology. So interesting to say that they have more than one project they have to run. There's a lot of reporting that they have to do, and they need the support for that. But then you go to the other one and you say, and 54% of organizations don't have it in real time. So maybe they're not having the technology support that they need to run their projects effectively. This one is one that I find interesting, because if we took this stat a few years back, it wouldn't be as high. 89% of organizations now have at least one project management office or program management office. They have a PMO. That's incredible, because I remember a time when it wasn't as many. So it's great to see that organizations are starting to understand that by creating a methodology, creating a strategy, proactively managing their portfolios is going to wield greater success. But there's another side to this coin. The other side to this coin is that 75% of PMOs fail within the first 3 years. So 89% have them, 75% fail. This is not a good philosophy, not a good strategy, not a good statistic. This is, if you want to see more of the source, you can find it from the annual report of the state of project management by Wellington. So interesting that we talk about all of this, because this leads us into, well, you know, how do we deal with that? How can we move forward? And the Guide to the Project Management Office PMO Guidebook was created by PMO Global. This resource, I wish we had this resource 20 years ago. We had to fumble our way through project management offices back then. So this book is phenomenal, because it puts together the framework. And today I'm going to highlight the framework itself, but there's a lot more in this book and that you can learn about. What it really does is it really sets a PMO standard. So it provides a basis for understanding and enabling intended outcomes in different project environments. So like I mentioned earlier, everybody has different industries, but the standard that you apply is really universal. And so being able to add that to your organization is important, and to have a resource like this helps you to understand what it is you need to set up and how to go about it. And it sits there as your foundational reference. So to better understand how PMO works and operates, fostering common understanding, practices, and approaches that every PMO should follow. So let's go through this and talk about the CB framework itself, PMO framework. When we talk about the framework, I just finished telling you, what PMO stood for. You're thinking, hey, Sandra, you just told us a minute ago what it stands for, but I want you to think about this. The book takes us through a different acronym, if you will. So the PMO approach talks about purpose, measure, and optimize. And the CB-PMO framework is based on this. So what is the purpose of your PMO? How will you measure that purpose? And then are you attaining it? And then how will you optimize it? This philosophy is the sort of winding thread that takes you through your whole PMO. It is so easy. When I think back, when I was a junior PM and I was at Air Canada and I was part of that project management office, I remember at the time, we could have benefited from having this because we had different stakeholders with different ideas of our purpose, and we were getting pulled in different ways. And it's hard to be successful. Now that PMO still is there and so on, but it could have optimized faster and had a better collaboration with its executives and key stakeholders. So having the right purpose, knowing how to measure it, being transparent on your measurements, and then optimizing. Now let's go through, so how do you do that? And the CB-PMO framework is going to take us through that. And I'm going to walk you through the overarching framework, and then we're going to dive into the framework itself. So we'll start first with the foundation layer. And this assesses the current condition of the PMO and develops the roadmap to activate the ultimate goal. And we'll go through what that means and how do you set up that foundational layer. Then we're going to go through the executable layer. And the executable layer is development of the policies, procedures, governance, proof of concept, and metrics. Like I mentioned earlier, measuring. We have that foundation, we've aligned. Now we're going to measure it. What is it that, how are we performing against it? The supporting layer takes a look at those methods, technology, and sustainment activities. This is why it's a circle. This is a continuing flow that we always go back to and we keep building upon. And last, but definitely not least, is our leadership and sponsorship. Majority of PMOs fail due to lack of effective role played by the PMO leadership. This is also key. We're going to talk about that and how do we build that out for our organization. So that all encompasses our overarching CB-PMO framework. So the foundation layer. We start with the business objective. What is it that your organization does? What are they trying to do? And understand your particular organization, and then understanding how your PMO strategy develops on that. You need to link your PMO strategy directly with the business objective, or you're not going to have that top-down support. It needs to be there. It needs to be value add. Do a health check in your organization. If you're starting out, this might be just a bit more of where you stand right now in your health check, but always, like I said, this circle, you're going to come back to this. You're going to always come back to your health check and evaluate and make sure that you're still aligned. And so you'll do the health check to see how we're performing. Are we following standards? Do we have standards? Do we have gaps? Do we have skill issues, et cetera? And do a maturity assessment. And this one absolutely says, this one takes a look overall of your whole organization. When we take a look at maturity models for project management, there's 5 levels to that. And I won't go into all the detail of that. The guidebook will take you through that as well. And there's a great tool in there that you can leverage. The maturity assessment takes a look at helping you understand, well, where is the organization at? Are they just at the very beginning, or are they fully mature? And taking a look to see, where do you stand? Because I always tell people, you have to start where you are. It's one thing, I've gone into organizations and they want to be at the managed level, but they don't have anything yet. So you got to start where you are. Where are we? And let's understand that so we can build upon it. And then you can analyze and define your PMO functions. All of this lines back up, remember, to that PMO objective. What functions are we going to put in place? How are we going to line up to that and set ourselves up for success? Building out that PMO roadmap. So what will we do over the next few months to start to accomplish this structure and what we need to do? And then, just like a project, you need a charter. So you need to build out your PMO charter. This helps your stakeholders understand, what's the business objective? What's the strategy that the PMO is taking? How are we lining up to it? Who's going to be on the charter? Who is the steering committee? How are we going to work going forward, et cetera? So as you go through, just like you do your project charter, you're going to identify, do we have resourcing? What's the funding for this? Put these elements in place. And yes, I see there's a question here. There is a PMO charter example in the guidebook, which I believe everybody, Nadine, is getting. Are they getting a copy of the guidebook if they buy the membership, right? If they win.
Only if they win the competition, Sandra. Come on. Yeah, Adrian, you can win the PMO guidebook today, so please stick around for the quiz.
So make notes, because I did hear that if you answer these questions properly, you're in contention. So yes, the PMO charter is there, and you'll use that as your basis document, which like you do with a project. So as we're speaking about the guidebook, there are a number of templates in that guidebook. There's a sample health check. There is a maturity assessment. There is a roadmap template and a PMO charter template. So become a member of the PMO Global Institute, and you'll get that guidebook, and you'll have all those tools. I recommend it. Not just for people who are running PMOs, but people who work in PMOs. You should have this type of information and to help support your organization. The executable layer. So we've built the foundation. Now we hit the executable layer. We're going to do what we call develop the 2PG, the policy, procedure, and governance. Set up that expectation of how you're going to organize your projects, the policies around it, the procedures around it. Put that all in place to set up that structure for your organization. But before you go anywhere else, you're going to do a proof of concept. And it's interesting because when you do a proof of concept, first you get to see how is it working, tweak it, fix it, and then go back, and then you're ready to launch larger. When I've done this before, another interesting thing happens. The executives will see the difference between your POC and how well that project's working and the rest of their projects. And all of a sudden, they want more. And that's part of dealing with that top down support. Your stakeholders will want more. They'll like the cadence that you start to develop because you've put something in place, and then they want to see it on all the other projects. Now, having them link arms with you makes a big difference, because they want to move to that next stage with you. And it's not as much, you don't have to convince as much. They've seen it, they like it, they want it. They've given their feedback. You might tweak the process accordingly, and then you can move forward. Now you want to define your PMO KPIs. And this is one I find PMOs forget to do, but it's important, because you need to show the value. You need to show how are we performing and tweaking and optimizing thereafter. So you need to define metrics to measure your objectives that you stated in your PMO charter. And then define the roles and develop the competencies. So build out those competencies so that you can be successful overall in delivering your projects and your portfolios. And then evaluate the ROI of the PMO. How did you perform? How has this impacted and added value to the organization? And again, the guidebook does talk about different metrics that you can use and give you some starting points so that you can go from there. You want to track that PMO performance. You want to know, are we doing well? Where do we need to keep working on? Where are we focused? And then continually improve and build out. So when we talk about this, the results, like I said, are a big point. You want to show how you're performing, and we want to be transparent on that. So it needs to be based on objectives. Remember earlier you created that charter. Now you want to measure. This is what we agreed to, that this is what the PMO would do, and we're measuring against it, and here's our performance against it. It's going to be results-based. It's going to be, this is how we're performing. Hey, maybe we have to build out in this area, and you start to strategize on how you'll do that. But all of it comes back and links back to providing value to the organization. Really important that you do that. It's not just, oh, we do this activity over here. It's, we have totally aligned ourselves to the organization, and we are results driven. So some sample PMO KPIs. What metrics could you use to measure performance? And I'll ask you guys, do you have thoughts on different metrics that you could use? What might you want to measure in your organization? It is a trickier one. If you haven't thought this way before. Yeah, time to completion. Yeah, projects failed. Yeah, the financials for sure. Taking a look at whether it's ROI of your portfolio, or does the portfolio link to the strategy and the ROI associated? Yeah, good point there, Faye. Yeah, it needs to be defined at the project initiation, agreed with the business. Yeah, so those are some great ones. How well the objectives are met. Absolutely. You know, taking a look and finding ways to measure the scope and see that you're delivering on the scope you were intended to. Taking a look at the benefits, be it qualitative or quantitative, were there. And some other examples as well, just like you may do on your project, schedule performance index and cost performance index, having that for your portfolio as well, taking a look at how the portfolio is performing, your project management office overall. Benefits realized compared to benefits forecast, you know, return on investment across the PMO's project portfolio, projects delivered in line with the business case, somebody mentioned that earlier, time elapsed between the proposal of a project and its activation. That kind of gives you a little bit of information about how fast is your organization and potentially your PMO at initiating a project, and where does it fall apart? Because now you can go back and you can optimize, right? Projects that were delivered on budget over the last year, time elapsed between risk identification and mitigation. So there's just some different ways that you can measure overall. And so let's go into the supporting layer of the framework. So we talked about supporting, we've talked about the foundation, we've talked about executable, and we'll go into now, you know, methods, models, methods, and artifacts. You need to set these up for the organization. Some people actually want to start here, you know, they want to come to this point, but they haven't given thought to all the other elements. But now you're taking a look at this and making sure you've got that in place, and you're always updating those. Stakeholder management, just like you do on your projects, you need to do stakeholder management with your PMO. Make sure that you're meeting with your stakeholders, make sure those key stakeholders are part of your stakeholder matrix, and you're managing it accordingly to make sure that you understand and they understand as well, and get their input and feedback. Taking a look at the environment, how the environment affects your PMO. Somebody had mentioned earlier, process is too rigid. An example I would have, when I was at certain organizations, some organizations love rigid processes and others don't. You've got to scan the environment and see what you're dealing with. Some of the operational environments I dealt with, they could only handle bare minimum. Partially because obviously they're at the lower end of the maturity level, they're just getting started. But these are things that you have to be aware of in the environment. You've got to know where you are and build accordingly. And then your PMO technology stack. Having the tools you need in order to effectively manage your project portfolio, it's going to save you time, it'll make you more efficient. And nowadays, you can even start to leverage AI, where a lot of these tools help you to be smart about how you do work, and they actually help you so that you can actually do the work. It'll flag things for you based on certain criteria and so on. So taking a look at the tools that you have to manage your projects and not just treating it as an afterthought, something to think about as you grow and build. Your team structure and what structure, according to the type of PMO you've created, is appropriate. Don't forget about succession planning. You want this group to continue on. Who will be the successor? How will you build up those skills to have that succession plan enacted? Supporting functions that you need in order to keep the PMO going and in place. That PMO structure we mentioned, and then the agile PMO, as agile has become so much more prevalent over the past few years. Adopting agile principles into your PMO, taking some of those principles, taking a look at how your projects are delivered, the types of methodologies you use. You might be in a PMO that has agile projects and waterfall projects, but you also just can use some of the agile principles from the manifesto to think about, how do we run our portfolio? You're going to find that your executive is going to resonate with your executive. So taking the time to understand what that means and building that into your PMO is important. And then last but definitely not least is your leadership and your sponsorship. Taking a look at how that affects your PMO overall. So who's leading your PMO? Putting that person in place, choosing someone that has the ability to run the PMO, getting them the right training, putting the right support in place, making sure that they are able to run the PMO. So many organizations will just choose a project manager, say, oh, you run the PMO. Send them for training, send them for the CB-PMO training, send them to get that understanding, build out your PMO leadership. Your executive sponsorship is key for PMO success. You need the top-down support of your executive sponsor. Those statistics that I mentioned earlier, a lot of failure happens because you don't have that sponsorship support of the PMO. So nurture that relationship, build that, ensure that you've got that there. And then emotional intelligence, not to be underestimated. When we talk about emotional intelligence, it's the ability to sense, understand, manage, and apply the information and power of emotions as a source of energy, motivation, connection, influence. This is an important piece of information. You're going to have different, when I've gone in and done PMOs, it's been different in different organizations. People are feeling different things. If I'm in a punitive organization, meaning that when somebody does something wrong, they're coming down on them, I need to know that so I can help to foster a different type of culture, because you don't want people to hide their status of their projects. You want to help them with the status of their projects, and having the EQ to help do that is extremely important and something that you need to constantly work on and talk about with your key stakeholders. So that's the overall framework. As we talk about that, we build that layer out. If I had started with this page, it might have been daunting, but you can see as we go through the wheel and we go through the different pieces, it really is a logical structure to how to set up your PMO, first on its foundation, but then for its ultimate success. And like I said, just like that wheel is cyclical, you're going to always go back. You may find as you go through and you start off your PMO charter and you develop out your concept and you start with a smaller scope, that your executive wants to grow it. Maybe they're going to add other responsibilities. Now you can go back, pull out that charter again, take a look at it and say, okay, wait a second, let's add it to our objectives, add it overall to how we'll do it, and then funnel it all the way through. What do I need to do to make sure that it's adequately supported and that I'm able to measure it and I'm able to report back on it so that I can be successful in how our PMO performs. By doing this, being transparent about this, using this framework, I am certain you'll see way better success with your PMO. Like I said, where was this tool? Abdullah, like 20 years ago. We needed this a while back, but over the past few years, this tool has come out, and it is a fantastic tool. I want to take a moment to thank you for your time. As mentioned, I am Sandra Boyle. I know my name doesn't say it on the screen. If you want to reach out to me, you can reach out to me at info@pmevolve.com. And somebody was asking for a freebie. Here's a little freebie. If you want a template on PMO process standardization, got a free little template there. You can go to pmevolve.com and grab it there. And I will be teaching a course on the CB-PMO in case you want to get certified or take a deeper dive into this whole framework and how do you do each of those steps overall. Look for that. December is the time frame. So thanks very much, and I'll turn it to everyone. Do you have any questions that I can answer for you?